Thank you, man, guys. Am I using this right? I don't normally need one. I've got a voice like a foghorn. So, guys, you should all be commended for coming out today. I was sitting at home over the past week trying to work out what the hell I'm actually going to say. I'm supposed to say heck, but what the heck I'm actually supposed to say. And I know that I've got Trish Harris coming after me, and we've got David Lowe, and we've got Brett Melky, and everyone seems to have covered all the angles. And so I thought to myself, what's my audience actually going to be today? And then I realised that all of you out there today are actually already converts. You already understand that on a multitude of levels, breed-specific legislation doesn't work. So, do I come up here and I say the same old things, the fact that there are no statistics to back it up, the fact that judging a dog on how it looks, trying to decide how it's going to behave based on how it looks is just crazy? Do I give you all this, the same old rhetoric that, no offence, but when we ran a rally 12 months ago, you've already heard me say all this stuff? Or do we take a new tact and we talk about what you guys that are here can take home from today? What I came up with maybe everyone doesn't like, but I'm going to say it anyway and we'll see how we go. So the first thing that we need to understand, guys, I would just like you to try this on. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. But I would like you to try on this considered opinion that I have, and that is that the reason the breed-specific legislation has been allowed to go through is, well, for starters, the first batch of it was a resounding success, and I would argue that right now, as it stands, breed-specific legislation is a resounding success. It's a very successful piece of legislation for the government. Now I can see pretty much everyone's face, everyone wants to punch me right now for saying that. But the reality is that it has been very effective, because this legislation was only ever designed to make the public feel safe. Does everyone get that? Everyone's picking up what I'm putting down? It was only ever meant to make someone feel, Joe Bloggs, feel safe. That's not what legislation is supposed to be about, because the major stakeholder is you, the rate-paying public, the tax-paying public. Politicians are supposed to represent us collectively, and legislation is supposed to be in our best interests, not the best interests of politicians. Rushing through amendments to and strengthening of breed-specific legislation, changing the amnesty length so that they cut another year off it roughly, that only served the politicians and gave the politicians the ability to slap each other on the back around morning tea and, you know, suck up the love from everyone who watches Today Tonight and is absolutely convinced that there is a certain breed or a couple of breeds of dogs stalking their children's playground right now. Okay? The reality of the situation is that we as a community that understands that this legislation is a really bad move, we need to flip the script, so to speak. And what we need to do, we need to approach this and look at it and say, how do we change the narrative of all those people that are across the road and walking past, and there's not that many today, but how do we change the way that they look at breed-specific legislation, the narrative, guys? And so probably the biggest thing, and those of you from Facebook would know that I'm big about this, let's get rid of the use of any, and I think we would all agree that there is a specific section of dogs that is what we'll call at risk from breed-specific legislation, the type of dogs that some of the standards may be applied to. And I would say, if you really want to take something away from today, you want to start to change the narrative of the people out there, the people that don't understand how bad this is. Stop associating the look of dogs that are in that at-risk group with the argument of breed-specific legislation, because the two, in reality, should have nothing to do with each other. That's fact. Okay? Breed-specific legislation at its core, sure, it makes the public feel safe. So what we need to do is we need to argue the cold, hard fact that breed-specific legislation has been rushed through, and it's based on absolutely nothing other than a knee-jerk. There's no scientific information, any peer-reviewed literature from anywhere in the world that actually supports the use of the policies that are currently in place. Period. Okay? So if we start to make this argument, BSL being about keeping the public safe and showing that it doesn't actually reduce dog bites, rather than associating one or a couple of specific types of dogs with that argument, that goes a long way towards changing the way that these people across here that don't yet understand what the argument about think of things. Can everyone see that point? I stood here, there was another excellent rally that was run a little earlier this year, and over the back I stood there on the corner with a friend of mine, and we listened to what people were saying, and they saw photos of a specific type of dog put next to BSL, and when they were crossing from that side to that side, I would sit there and young educated looking people, nicely dressed, would say, "What's all that about?" And they'd say, "Oh, it's about killing such and such breed." See? Have a look, they're killing the such and such. And that's what we want to try and turn around. So what can we take away from today? It's not about a specific breed, and don't associate one of the at-risk type dogs at all with any of this stuff. Guys, let's start talking about the fact that it doesn't keep the public safe. If the feeling of safety perpetuates BSL in the public, then what we need to do is we need to work on the fact, show them the fact, prove the fact that it doesn't keep them safe. And we're going to see that because there are no good statistics kept here in Victoria, and very soon we're going to see that dog bites actually went up during BSL. Yeah? Soon to be Dr. Linda Watson. Where are you, Doctor? Soon to be Dr. Linda Watson. Linda is doing her thesis on exactly that, guys. And those of you that don't know, soon to be Dr. Linda Watson, she does a lot of great work in VCAT. So that's probably my big thing, that's my big bugbear, is I'm sick of seeing pictures of stereotypical breeds associated with breed-specific legislation. Breed-specific legislation is at its core a failure because it doesn't protect the public. It also costs them a lot of money. Okay, so we need to start playing that card. We need the public to understand. The other thing that I want to talk about, guys, is as I'm speaking to our community, a community that I'm a part of, people that own dogs that may be at risk or see the idiocy of breed-specific legislation, we need to start looking at what we can do as a community and how we can change our culture in order to really chop the legs from under BSL. And in order to do that, what we really need to do is focus upon what I call responsible canine guardianship. I choose Bill Bruce, who he's a Canadian fella who was big on the Calgary model. He instituted it. They don't use any BSL, any breed bans, any number limits, any mandatory desexing over in Calgary in Alberta, Canada. And Bill has actually had the legislation in that city changed, the city ordinance changed to use the word guardianship instead of ownership. That's where I stole it from. And now I claim it as a Brad Griggs original, but it's stolen just like everything else that everyone else does. And we really need to take that attitude of guardianship, okay? We owe our dogs something. And let me tell you, unfortunately, there would be many people in this community here and those that didn't turn up, where if we really look at ourselves and the way that we own our dogs and whether or not we even train our dogs, many of us, and I don't expect anyone to put their hand up, but many of us would not have a dog that would walk reliably on a loose leash. Thanks, buddy. He agrees with me, he was just yelling it out. He said Brad's awesome, and then he held up the #1 sign, which looked a little bit different. But so there are 4 things that you need to have a dog to be a responsible guardian for your dog, and I'm sure Trish Harris is going to touch on some of this, okay? But #1, the dog must walk on a loose leash, even under distraction and duress, guys. You want to be a responsible guardian? That is what your dog needs to do. #2, your dog must drop when told to drop. Okay? Doesn't matter on lead, off lead, at a distance. When you tell your dog to do it, 1 command, 1 response, your dog drops. Okay? That is part of responsible canine guardianship. So your dog now walks on a loose lead, he drops when you tell him to drop, he comes back when you call him, first time every time. Okay, and the fourth understanding that a dog has to have is reliably appropriate greeting behaviour. And nowhere is that more important than in the at-risk group of dogs. Okay, if your dog does not reliably walk on a loose lead, if your dog does not come back when you call it, if he does not drop on command, and if he doesn't show reliably appropriate greeting behaviour, and let me add, all of that should be done to a termination cue. So you don't tell your dog to stay, you tell your dog to drop, and your dog drops, and your dog finishes when you tell him to. Make sense? There's no guesswork for the dog, they get it fast. You know, it only takes 6 weeks to train a slow learning dog to do all that stuff. Brent, Kat, Trish, if I'm lying, I'm dying, okay? So it only takes 6 weeks, and that's what we really need to take from here, from me today. That's what I want you to take home. Stop associating certain pictures with BSL, right? It's all about dog bite prevention for the community. That's all taxpayers care about. They don't care about dogs losing their lives. They honestly don't. If they did, Graham Smith wouldn't be sitting on $12 million with the Lost Dogs Home, would he? Right? No one cares. No one cares. So let's talk on a level that appeals to all these good people over here. Breed-specific legislation makes a dog bite statistically more likely to happen to someone that you know and or love. Period. All right? The next thing is the responsible canine guardianship. Your dog can't walk on a loose lead, reliably, under distraction, won't drop, won't recall, here goes the throat, and doesn't have reliably appropriate greeting behaviour. Then, with no offence meant, you are not currently being a responsible canine guardian. Yeah? So, some people may not like hearing it, but it's something that you need to be working towards, guys. How do you do that? Well, it all sums up to this, guys. You need to train for action, so you need to teach your dog what to do. This is what our drop is. And then, after a period of time, you need to train your dog for abstinence, which is, now I've told you to do this thing that you know how to do, now don't do anything else. If your dog training doesn't focus on action and then follow that up with abstinence, then you're not ticking the boxes and you need to find a new trainer. And in reality, I would recommend someone who's done an NDTF course, because they'll be nicely balanced. They won't be all purely positive and they won't be all crunching dogs on check chains all day. Be somewhere nicely balanced in the middle. That's what I wanted to say to you today, guys. Thanks for all coming out. Let's see the end of BSL. Let's see an improvement in our community, a focus on responsible canine guardianship, guys. Thanks.